Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Front Line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Rossinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go in to the breach. The breach. Joe Rossinello, whether you like it or not, if you're on social media and you're talking about anything like what we're talking about, you're in the breach, brother or sister. Let's be politically correct. Joe, there's a lot going on. I will say this, Joe Rossinello. Yep, it's been a while since I actually did this, okay? I got myself a little bit of J&B. I went old school. I went old school Italian tonight. Okay, I got a little bit of J&B because I had a thought of my deceased Uncle Nicky, who used to say to me with his Italian accent, "Young man, a real man drink a scotch," and you don't get any more old school Italian than J&B. So, Real News TV on Rumble. You're with Joe and Joe, Frontline with Joe and Joe. If you're watching us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, remember, wherever you see this video, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Joe, I bring up the scotch because sometimes you have to numb the pain, okay? Because when you either read a lot of the stuff out there, when you watch a lot of the stuff out there, and Joe, let me tell you, I don't scroll anymore. Scrolling is a bad thing. When you're scrolling through, even though you and I look for things that we might want to talk about, it's destructive. It hurts your brain. It hurts your soul because there's just so many lies out there, okay? So you got, let's say, for argument's sake, somebody like Justin Trudeau. All right, wait a minute, Joe. I know you don't like that I do that, okay? You don't like when I do that, so we'll just call him Justin Trudeau, all right? So I'm curious, Joe, and I really want your opinion on this. You've done a ton of videos. I would recommend anybody out there go on Facebook, go on YouTube. Over the last year, Joe's covered so much of the trucker convoy, the trucker protest in Canada, Justin Trudeau, Pierre Poilievre. I recommend you do that. Good, insightful little shots that Joe put out there. But not for nothing, Joe. There's one of two things going on here. He really is a dope, and he doesn't understand what it is that he does, or he's a smug elite who doesn't care. Where am I going with this? Well, on the screen, you'll see Justin Trudeau spends Christmas vacation at a luxury estate in Jamaica. Okay. He's got money, Joe. If I had money, maybe I'd stay at a really nice place in Barbados or someplace like that. But as a so-called world leader, the Prime Minister of Canada, do you think maybe he should have did some research, or his people should have done some research to know that the place he's staying at was a former slave plantation? Joe, they think you and I are stupid, Joe. Okay,
well, they don't get covered. It's not, they're not going to get any coverage on it. I mean, the Toronto Sun covered it.
The Toronto Sun covered it, right? Yeah.
But he's done this in the past. I could recall, like last year, same thing. I mean, it's bad optics. I mean, think about it. Here's a guy that's impoverished his nation. 1 in 5 people eating at food banks in Toronto. You have carbon taxes, not 1 but 2. People can't afford food. And you're going to spend a holiday whereby if I was to go to this estate, it would cost me $7,000 a night. It's bad optics. And he should know better. Or to your point, he doesn't care.
Exactly.
But that should make us care. These are the people that represent us. Joe Biden's the same type of guy. And these are the people who are asking you to make deep sacrifices. They're asking you to do that in the name of climate. Yet he is spending a holiday whereby if you were to go, it will cost you $7,000 a night. Guys, what's wrong here?
Well, Joe, real quick, Veronica's in the chat room. Welcome everybody in the chat room. Sean's in there, Alan, Veronica for now. We got about 80 watching, which is awesome. And thank you all. And please share these videos. Joe and I are just getting back together again. I mean, Joe and I always do our regular show, but as far as live on social media, we're just getting back into it over the last few weeks. So we really appreciate the support. Veronica said, and I agree with her, Joe, I'm going to throw it right back to you. Welcome to the new world. Get freaking used to it. Now, am I saying that? Is Veronica saying that? Or is Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden and the smug elites saying that? I get the feeling it's them because they have no shame, Joe Resinello. They'll tell you, Justin Trudeau has basically made it clear, and he's done this, by the way, in press conferences, so it's not me saying it, okay? You can go look at his press conferences, that he will make every excuse in the world for placing a carbon tax, which he knows damn well are not going to hit him or his friends or any other smug elites, that it's going to hit all the middle and working class people of Canada. And what's his response? His response, I guarantee without knowing for certain, would be, well, you could always eat bugs rather than have a sandwich, and then you could pay for your new gas and electric bill that I'm going to provide to you because of the carbon tax. Joe, that is kind of the new world order to
No, I
Veronica.
get it. You're 100% right. And I've said this a million times. These like crazy woke liberals that run Canada, that run America right now, if you're in the middle class, first of all, they hate you. People have to get that through their head. They hate you. Why do you say that, Joe? Because they're beating you senseless with tax. They're taxing you to death.
Mm-hmm.
They caused inflation. They destroyed the supply chain. They're destroying you. They hate you. You can't afford to vote for them. You see,
Can I ask you a question? Can
please.
I ask a question then of you, Joe Resinello, and our audience? If you want to chime in the chat room, please feel free. Let me ask you a question, Joe. What is the middle class or working class person offered by the Trudeaus, the Bidens, the Hillary Clintons, the Gavin Newsoms, and all these people?
Nikki
What are
Haley,
they?
throw her in too.
Oh yeah, okay. What are they offered? Because we know that person is ready to take a major hit in their pocket, as you're saying. Okay, so then what does Trudeau offer them that would compel that person to vote for them? I'm curious.
Honestly, what I think it is, this is my opinion. I'm going to put it out there. A lot of these people buy into the climate cult too. It's their God.
Would you throw abortion in there too?
Yeah, I will. I'll buy that. I'll say it's an abortion because you know, casual sex. Republicans and Democrats both has
That I'll
casual
agree.
sex.
I'll agree with that.
Climate. A lot of these people, that's their God. So they basically, in their mind, say, you know, we're going to take a hit because we're doing something good. That's the only thing I could possibly think that they're willing, and to your point, the sex part, because they do engage in casual sex outside of marriage, and if they do get a woman pregnant, as if they were a guy or a woman gets pregnant, they want an out. So they're willing to get their ass kicked, and they do.
No,
Because
no, they're right. Well, that's my point. That's my point. It's some freaking beating that they're going to get because, okay, in the name of, let's call it sexual liberation. In the name of sexual liberation, if you're a person, let's say, making netting 700 a week in Canada, okay, or even in the United States, okay, 2,800 a month. Let's say you're living in a not a poor area, but a decent area. You're spending about $1,000 on rent. If you keep things lean and mean, you're spending another $1,000 on bills and food and things like that. And I'm stretching. And then you got a few $100s left over. You're willing to give more of that money to Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden because they're willing to keep, let's say, for argument's sake, abortion legal. And what do they expect them to do about climate change, by the way? I'm curious. Like, what is just Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden going to do to the John Kerrys of the world or the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world who fly around the world in private jets? They're not going to do anything to them. The only person they're going to hit is that same middle-class person that's going to vote for them.
100%. But again, that person, to your point, Joe, for sexual liberation, they also worship the climate. They do. I actually talked to a guy at work. You know, I mentioned this like 2 weeks ago. On Sundays, him and his son clean a river. Like, I go to church. That's what they do. And he thinks he's like, and I'm all for the environment. Don't get me wrong. Like, we have to be good stewards of the environment. With that said, I don't worship the environment. And here's another thing. There are scientists that refute the claim. I'm not saying I know everything about it, but just as many quote unquote scientists that are banging the drum on this, there are some that say no, yet they get no voice. How about we have a debate? I want to see. I want to see your research. And also, I'll throw this out at people. Two thoughts. Nuclear energy is very good for what are they trying to lower? The
The carbon
carbon,
emissions.
yeah, the I don't even friggin' know. But they don't like that either. Why? I throw that out there. And the second thing I'll throw out there with regard to this is frankly, Joe, it's crazy. It's simply just craziness. It's like because they don't want to worship God. They don't want to worship God. They don't. So it fills the hole. And again, if you're super rich and you want to do this and you can afford this like Justin Trudeau, that's your business. But if you're not, I'll be honest with you, I can't understand you. I simply can't. I shake my head. I just say to
Well,
myself,
well, here's the thing. Let me play devil's advocate with you for a minute. If you're joining us here, Real News TV on Rumble, Frontline with Joe and Joe, on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Please, wherever you're seeing this video, like, subscribe, share. We got a nice amount of people watching. We got 84 people watching right now. A lot of great people in the chat room. Alan, interesting comment. I mean, this is the type of stuff, Joe, that makes you, as my mother would say, makes your brains will fall out. Okay. Alan says DiCaprio, Leonardo, recently or once, he says, DiCaprio once sent a plane to Australia for someone to fix his eyebrows for the Oscars. Joe, let me ask you a question. Let's say I was the type of guy that, let's say I wanted to have sex. I was a single guy and I wanted to have sex with whoever. Okay. And if I get that woman pregnant, I want abortion to be legal because I don't want any consequences. Would I still even then vote for these people when I hear that type of hypocrisy? Even if I had that mindset, and I don't, okay? I don't. But even if I had that mindset, that we're getting preached to, especially when you see somebody smug. I mean, we're talking about Justin Trudeau, but when you talk about him, staying at a former slave plantation in Jamaica while he's telling people to eat bugs in Canada and imposing a carbon tax. John Kerry goes up in front of the House and Senate and tells all the congressmen and senators that they don't know what the F they're talking about, like John Kerry does. Okay, at what point does a normal human being, even the sexually liberated type, say, I can't vote for these guys? They're just too damn smug and too damn elitist for me. Am I off, Joe? I mean, I don't think I am.
That's a person with integrity. I mean, like, to be truthful with you, that's part of the problem. Democracy doesn't work with amoral people. Joe, we vote to lop off the breasts of 15-year-old girls. We vote to kill babies in the third trimester. That's not even abortion. It's infanticide. How are we going to get the president right? We're beyond that. We are an amoral people. Like, there have been other things from a religious perspective that have become normalized that have destroyed our nation, but they're not even worth mentioning anymore because it's so mainstream. So mainstream. And I could go through a litany of those things too. I'm not going to waste everybody's time. But what I just mentioned, those things are so in your face wrong. So in your face wrong. And we don't care.
Right.
People don't care. Like, I was just saying this recently to a friend of mine at work. If you told me guys running for president, whoever, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. And he says to me, if you're over 75, you can't work, I have to euthanize you. You're eliminated. I can't, you disqualified yourself. That idea is insane. Well, chopping off the breasts of a 15-year-old girl and not telling their parents, that's insane. You're disqualified. If you're going to tell me that you're going to legalize abortion in the third trimester, I've had 5 kids. I know what a kid looks like with a sonogram. You're insane.
Right.
You're insane. I can't even everything.
But then who's more insane? It begs
because
the
we
question.
Don't care. We're
the person who's running for office or the person voting for them? Who's more scrumbiad, as my mother would say in Italian?
Joe, they don't care because their hearts are cold. Joe, that's crazy. You see, I'm just being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, I'm going to be honest with you. If you had everything else right, and you told me you're running for president, everything, and you're like, Joe, 15-year-old girls, if they want to lop off their breasts, they can do it, and it's not going to cost them anything. They don't have to tell their parents. I'd be like, Joe, I can't vote for you. I can't,
Right.
I can't vote
Right.
for you, Joe. I can't go there.
It reminds me. It reminds me of that line that Nicholson had in "As Good as It Gets" when he looked at the woman who's standing in his doorway and she's spieling something, and he turns around and says, "Listen, sell crazy somewhere else. We're all stocked up
Well,
here."
that's right. I mean, and this is, but people don't care. So, like, and again, I don't even think you have to be a religious person to come to that conclusion, in my opinion.
Well,
Sorry.
but it also, and this is a conversation for another day because we're not going to get into the whole, libertarian thing. See, to me, I made a boneheaded prediction 20 years ago that libertarians, in 20 years, which would have been very recently, would have made a lot more headway, which would mean that they think a libertarian, because I know libertarians, they think that the Democrats are insane when it comes to lopping off children's breasts and things like that. Okay. But they're very fiscally conservative. But libertarians don't seem to get much traction either, because I think a lot of people don't trust them either. I will say this too. I think it was Nikki Haley. Somebody questioned her recently about transgenderism, the question of mutilating children, and minors and things like that. She goes, "Well, I want the government to have as little to say about it as possible." Wrong answer, Nikki.
Well,
Wrong answer.
but that shows she has no character. And
Oh,
and
none. Zero.
and I
Zero,
mean,
Joe.
that's again, but this is what we get. This is what, Joe. This is why we're not voting ourselves out of it, because
Oh, no. We're
this
not
is
voting
what
ourselves out of anything.
this is what we get. And and again, you don't have to be a daily communicant to come to that conclusion. Sane people. You don't even have to be educated. Sane people. These ideas are insane. They're insane. And listen, and they have consequences. They simply have consequences. And we're seeing them. Our kids are depressed. Our kids are committing suicide. Our kids are overdosing. Our kids are committing violent crimes. And it's not just in poor neighborhoods. So there you go.
No, right?
I
Right.
mean, like, you get what you get. But again, it's about selfishness.
But if you say like another way of obviously Joe Resinello saying, you get what you get, you reap what you sow.
Well, that's
Okay.
right.
And
That's
if
right.
people that think that that's a religious uh teaching, and it is, okay, but it's also a practical real world teaching. Who doesn't agree that you will reap what it is that you have sown?
Well, that's right.
Okay. You want to
That's
call it,
right.
I don't agree with any of it, Joe. I don't agree with karma.
No,
Okay. I don't agree.
there is
But
no
if you want
such
to
thing.
call it karma, go ahead. It's a similar concept to justice. You're gonna get what
Well,
you
reap what you
deserve.
sow. Just like if you study for a test, you do well. Like if you have a history test and you study for 2 weeks, you read the books and you study the notes and you go to the lectures, you get an A
Right.
because you studied. You reap what you sow. Well, we're reaping what we sow, and that's all it takes.
Well,
That's
and
all it is.
listen. I have no problem anymore telling people that. By the way, if you're just joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, remember we're Real Truth News on Rumble, okay, and on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Find us at the front line with Joe and Joe. If you just search for that, at with Joe and Joe on Twitter. But help us out, man. If you there's 100 people in the chat room right now. Or 100 people watching. You got a bunch of people in the chat room, people we've never seen before. Barbara Farley's back, Joe Rissinello.
Love it.
Happy
Love
New
it.
Year. Glad to watch the show. Barbara, God bless you, sister. So Barbara's back, and Mike's here. Let's give a little shout out. Alan's here, Steve's here, Elvis, Josh. So we got a bunch of people. Jerome's here. Veronica, we mentioned earlier. So we got a lot of great people, a lot of great comments in the chat room. So share our videos, man. Hey, even for you non-Catholics out there, Joe and I have some really great conversations that we put up all the time. We discuss with the who's who of Catholic authors and personalities, but those ideas we discuss, they appeal to a lot of different people. Okay. We understand there's people outside of us that are Catholic, but we still think we have something to say. And we think that we're there to inform you. We're all in this together. Okay. You're our brothers and sisters. So please check us out. And if you like what you see, share it with your friends. So, yeah, Joe, let's put a finer point on Mr. Trudeau. Okay. The bottom line is he's an elitist. He's a smug elitist. The world is chock full of smug elitists. Joe, one thing I'll tell you right now, Klaus Schwab's not doing. He ain't drinking J&B. Okay,
No,
he's probably doing a little what would you
he's
call
a
it? Louis the 13th,
he's a
or something
Vulcan,
along.
dude.
What
He's a
he's what?
Vulcan. He's a Vulcan.
He's a Vulcan. He's Mr. Spock's cousin.
There's
Uh,
no doubt about that.
but now here's the thing, Joe. Smug elites, they go like this. They keep poking you, poking you, poking you. Eventually, they start to punch you in the face. Eventually, when you stop, when that doesn't work for them, eventually they're going to try to break your legs. And eventually, after that, they're going to try to kill you. Now, again, a lot of what I'm saying is figurative. But again, we've seen examples in the last 150 years where it ain't so figurative, especially when you're talking about the leftist thugs, okay, the communists in particular. Having said that, okay, at some point, Joe, people have had it up to here. And what happened in Colorado recently has got a lot of people cheesed off. So let's roll the clip and then let's have a comment.
Was the last time that we had states who were removing presidential candidate from the ballot?
Abraham Lincoln.
Thank you. What did that result in?
Civil War.
Civil War. This is not a joke anymore. We cannot take things like this lightly because we have specific examples in the history of our nation that we can look at, and then we can watch the result of that. We can look at that in history. And let me tell you right now, man, you don't want that, man.
He's exactly right. Because now there's a lot of people say, well, the Colorado Supreme Court acted within their authority. All right, we'll see. I heard recently, Joe, we're going to hear what the Supreme Court has to say about this. Now, there are ways of fighting. I recommended at one point that, well, any dyed-in-the-wool red state, their Supreme Court should take Joe Biden off the ticket. Just take him off. Say, well, Democrat. There's not going to be a Democrat primary in our state. And Joe Biden, whoever you put up, not going to be on the ballot. That's, I think, one solution. Just to try to say, hey, if you could do it, we could do it too. Not all 50 states are like Colorado. Not all 50 states are like Alabama. So they could do it. But here's the point, Joe. Why do we want to go down this road like this gentleman was just saying? Because what that leads to, and what we were discussing in the first segment, is the reaction to the smug elites. These people on the Colorado Supreme Court are obviously smug elites who don't want Donald Trump anywhere near the ballot, okay? But what happens to the people of Colorado, Joe, who want to vote for Donald Trump?
Well, they don't.
You know where I'm going with this, so I'll
They
throw it
don't
over
count.
to you.
Well, Joe, there's so much here. First of all, you don't have to like Donald Trump to oppose this. And I'm starting to think there are people out there like that, Joe Rogan being one of them. Joe Rogan can't stand Donald Trump. I've heard him say that.
Right.
Joe Rogan said he's voting for him. That's an example of one person. And there are many people like that because it's not about Donald Trump anymore. They say he's a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy.
Well, is this not real quick, Joe? Is this not an example of a threat to
That's
democracy?
exactly. And if you can't see that, I'll be honest with you, you should really sit back and self-examine here. Really. Because this is not about Donald Trump. It's about democracy. Listen, Donald Trump, if he is the candidate, we vote. That is how a democracy works. And if you don't like him, don't vote for him. But if you take him off the ballot, that basically says the state chooses who you stupid people vote for. And that is not, then let's go full out and call ourselves a totalitarian state because it's a mockery of the word. And it's also dangerous because what's going to happen is a large swath of Americans, not just MAGA Republicans, are going to lose faith in the institution. Barack Obama recently gave a speech at Stanford University and talked about that just thing. And he said that that is dangerous. When America does not have faith in the institution of the country, the government, well, guess what? You do this, it's not just going to be the MAGA Republicans, a lot of independents, and even sane Democrats. They're going to say, whoa, I don't like Donald Trump, but this is wrong. And it's dangerous.
Well, what would their Joe? What would their react? And by the way, Stephen James is in the chat room. Steve, I never argue with anybody in the chat room because we love the fact you're watching. George Carlin said I was Catholic until I reached the age of reason. I assume that you're not Catholic because you posted George Carlin. George Carlin was an anti-Catholic bigot. Number one, okay. Number two, we don't do that to people, Steve. Here at the front line with Joe and Joe. I have atheist friends. Joe and I both have Jewish friends, Protestant friends. Yes, we want everybody to be Catholic, but I'm a reasonable man. And George Carlin was unhinged. He was very funny, and I watched all of his shows, by the way. So I'm open to a lot of different people. But the bottom line is this: George Carlin was an anti-Catholic bigot. Is what he didn't like the Catholic Church. Fine, leave it. Okay, but don't suggest that I'm not a reasonable man, nor is Joe Rossinello, because we're Roman Catholic, okay? And you're welcome here, Steve, and you can respond any way you want, okay, which is fine because this is an open forum. You'll never be cut off by us, but I did want to respond to you. But, Joe, that's my point, is that let's say I'm in Arizona, which heaven knows what's going to happen here with the recent election that happened, and we got this Democrat who a lot of people are saying is not legit. I'm just throwing it out there. Okay. What if in a red state, a deep red state, the Supreme Court turned around to all the Democrats in that state and said, we're taking all your candidates off the ballot? What would I have a question. Joe, I have a question. What would the media reaction be, Joe?
Well, it would be nuts, but we know the media's in the tank. They'll never do it because, again, we talked about because they're owned.
No, Joe. I'm asking if they did.
Oh,
I'm not saying that
crazy. I mean, there's a million things. Joe, this has been 6 years. Russia, the impeachments, the January 6th trials that they're trying to convict Trump of. Now the raid of his house. Now this. Ultimately, they simply will not let him run or win. I take this as my cue. I remember when he was running against Biden, and basically Mike Knowles, who works for the Daily Wire, basically was covering it. And then all of a sudden, like, he'd be up, and then a mountain of ballots would come in. And then he just said in frustration, he's like, they just won't let him win. It's the same thing.
Right.
But what I'm hoping happens here is the model of Donald Trump opens the eyes of Americans, not just MAGA people, because I'm not a MAGA person. I'm an American, and this is dangerous. And I'm hoping this opens people's eyes to basically say, wow, we don't have a democracy. We don't have a democracy, and the establishment is choosing the people for you to vote for. That should trouble you. And if it doesn't, I got news for you. The tide will turn, and it will one day turn on you. That's how it works. And I don't want that to happen either, because then we don't have a country. The very thing that they're saying Donald Trump is doing, they're doing.
They're doing well, but how many times in the last, Joe, 6 years have you and I both said that everything that they do is projection? It's projection. They're projecting on you what they're doing themselves. Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. This is a threat to democracy. What the Colorado Supreme Court just did is not a threat to democracy. Again, Joe, I'm speaking as a person who's putting themselves in the shoes of Colorado Republicans who do want to vote for Donald Trump.
Well, they don't care about them.
A small group of people just told those people they can't vote for Donald Trump.
And what they're basically, the spin to people is he's a threat to democracy. He's a threat to the republic. He's a threat to them. You see, right. That's another thing that people have to cue into. This is about them. It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's about the people in the mainstream media are afraid. that he's going to come after them. He's going to break up Facebook. He's going to go after Google. It's about them.
But in fairness, this is my beef about Donald Trump, okay, is that he had 4 years and he should have tried to do that, okay? He should have done something. Now, I don't only blame him. I blame all the feckless Republicans. They trotted Dorsey out there and Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and what's his name from Utah? Mike Lee. And they put the screws to Zuckerberg. And they put the screws to Dorsey. And they put the screws to, I forgot the guy's name who runs Google. They put the screws to them. But you didn't do a damn thing about it. And nor did Trump, by the way. Trump had certain powers under the executive branch that he could have taken at least, Joe, to rock their world a little bit, to rattle, what do they call that, saber rattling? To rattle the sabers a little bit against him. He didn't do anything either. No, they all speak a very good game about the monopoly on social media, the monopoly on the mainstream media. And then they get mad at guys like us when they say, you want to know what, Joe? Elon Musk, I guarantee if you gave him a quiz and you gave him 10 of our positions, he probably agrees with us on maybe half of them and disagrees with on the rest. I much prefer Elon Musk to these people.
I would agree with that. But the thing is, again, they get money, Joe. You see, that's why they do nothing. Like, they don't represent us anymore.
But that's our fault then, Joe.
It is. But people are willing to give up a little bit of liberty for a house built on sand. Temporary peace. What they don't understand is this. Eventually, they're going to take it all. Eventually, they're just going to keep taking ground. You see, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not going to build on sand, and I won't. I'm willing to be honest with you. Rally we the people. I want to rally we the people. If you ask me, we need a velvet revolution. A velvet revolution is what took place in Czechoslovakia. It was a nonviolent revolution, and they threw out the communists. When people open their eyes to the fact that the government doesn't represent you anymore, it simply doesn't. George Bush didn't represent me. George Bush is an establishment Republican.
I thought he did at the time. I'm not going to lie. I thought he did at the time, but then after you grow up, you realize, no, he didn't.
And Nikki Haley does not represent me. And to be honest with you, as long as they're getting paid by special interests, you don't count. And that's why these guys don't do anything, and they never will. I don't listen to them anymore. It's a waste of time. I don't. Not a single peep. I don't listen to any of it. It's all theater.
Well, no, we know it's all theater. The problem is we're not letting them get away with their theater. And that's why I mentioned Elon Musk, by the way, Joe. And if you're joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, Real Truth News on Rumble. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. X @ Joe and Joe, Facebook and YouTube, the front line with Joe and Joe. Please help us out, share our videos, whatever the case might be. We're really, I'm very happy. Tonight's a really good audience. We have over 100 watching. We're going to get thousands of views once this is posted and it's all done. And we thank you for it. I can't get over the fact that Barbara's still with us, Joe. After all this time, Barbara Farley still our number one fan. First person outside of our families that actually watched us on social media, which is great. But Steve's right. By the way, Joe, Steve's back in my good graces because he reminded me that he's Catholic. Steve, he said, we're all willing to give up a little privacy for the security, but now none of it exists. So you don't even have security. And that's really where you go when you're getting back to Trudeau, and then we'll move on with Justin Trudeau. When you economically you're not secure in Canada, you can't speak your mind in Canada. You can't speak your mind in the United States. Maybe a little bit more so than you can do in Canada. But if you give Merrick Garland and his and the Department of Justice the opportunity, they will throw you in jail. Okay, we've seen that happen with Mark Houck, by the way. So we're not pulling that out of our you-know-what because Mark Houck defended his son in front of an abortion clinic by a rabid Planned Parenthood employee that was going after his son. And Merrick Garland went after that guy and threw him in jail, by the way. We know it can happen, Joe. We know it can happen. Now, let me ask you this, Joe. You and I have said this, I guess what, ad nauseum on this show. We don't look for political solutions, but we live in the world. and we have to make prudential choices about who we're voting for. All right. Now, Vivek is starting to wear on me a little bit in a good way. Okay. I kind of like the guy. I liked him in the beginning. He kind of waned a little bit. Now he's on his way back, but I guess that's politics. It's like a stock chart, Joe. It kind of goes like this, goes a little up and down. But the underlying trend line with me, with Vivek, is up. I would be inclined to voting for him. Let's roll. Let's roll. This clip, Joe, talks about elites in the media and Vivek at the same time. Let's roll the clip.
Recent weeks, you've put a lot of ideas out there. You've suggested on the campaign trail that January 6th was an inside job, that the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer was a job of inside entrapment, that the House Republicans, let me finish, that the House Republicans impeachment inquiry is part of a Democratic plot to sideline Biden, that there is a devious Democratic scheme to actually nominate Nikki Haley. The reality is none of these are top issues for Iowa voters. So why are you focused on these conspiracy theories?
Well, focused is a heavy-handed word, Dasha. If you take 80% of what I said, I'm talking about policy and future direction of the country, talking about how we'll increase the supply of energy to bring down the cost for everyday Americans. And so that's 80% of what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to hide from what I do believe are realities hiding in plain sight that people deserve to know about, which the last item that you described. It's not a secret that Larry Fink is going to fundraisers of Nikki Haley, propping her up. That actually one of the biggest funders of the lawsuits against Trump, including efforts to keep him off the ballot, is Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. That's a $250,000 donor to super PAC supporting Nikki Haley. And so I reject this mainstream media general narrative of dismissing something as a conspiracy theory, when in fact I'm a big fan of going after facts hiding in plain sight.
But you know that when
you see, now you see the reporter, Joe. Now, what he did was, I thought for once, somebody running for office actually didn't have to hide from what she was trying or try to deflect. He went right after her. He goes, 80% of the time I'm talking about issues, energy, this and that, immigration, whatever. He didn't say that, but you know what we're talking about. Meat and potato issues. But he goes, I'm not going to hide from these facts. Larry Fink is an elitist, smug elitist that we were describing in an earlier segment. He's supporting Nikki Haley. Same with the other people he's talking about. But did you see how the reporter gets so, Joe, she gets so incredulous, but you see how people, no, you are calling him a conspiracy theorist. You are saying that. He's not a conspiracy theorist. And he said flat out, I'm not going to hide from these facts. I'm going to point out these facts. That doesn't make a conspiracy theory. And Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you. Let's remember who coined the phrase conspiracy theory. It was the Central Intelligence Agency. Joe, this is an historical fact. It's not Joe Pasillo saying this. Everybody knows this. The CIA coined the phrase conspiracy theory for those who questioned the single shooter theory of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That's what they said. If you engage in anything other than that, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, guess what, Joe? The elitists, the smug elitists, left and right, they've picked that up. So anytime you try to connect the dots that are very easy to connect sometimes, okay, you're a conspiracy theorist. Joe, I want to know what you want to say.
Well, that's the way that they write you off, or they try to. And the thing about Vivek is he's the smartest guy in every room he walks into. He went to Yale Law School. He made $600 million. He's 37 years old.
I think that, listen, a lot of times, Joe, real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think a lot, maybe it comes from the times I was a stockbroker, when I always had the thought in my mind, just because you're rich doesn't mean you're smart. Vivek's rich, and he's smart, and he's smart. You can't make that kind of money without having some sort of brain cells in your head.
No, he made it all himself. That's my point. And here's the thing. He's a lawyer. He's a very good debater. How is it conspiracy theory that Nikki Haley's getting tons of money from the military industrial complex?
Right.
How is it conspiracy that she's getting money from Larry Fink? That's not conspiracy. That should trouble average Americans.
Right.
What that should say to you is their vote means more than you. How are you comfortable with that? I'm not.
Right.
You don't have to like Vivek. Don't vote for him. But the fact is the fact. How are you comfortable with the fact that in January 6th, it's on video that doors were opened to an angry mob?
Right.
How are you comfortable with that?
How about Nancy Pelosi refuses to testify? And she was the Speaker of the House at the time. Now, again, are we saying all this is true? All we're saying is this. Why are all these open-ended things there? Like, why would Nancy Pelosi not? Well, I won't dignify that committee. Well, sorry, Nancy, that doesn't quite work when you're actually putting people in jail without habeas corpus,
Well, that's another thing.
without constitutional rights.
Again,
It doesn't kind of work.
If you claim to believe in democracy, you can't do that, but we don't have a democracy. That is the goal for me of this election this year. I want more people to see it. That's what I'm going to point out. We no longer live in a democracy. This is not the republic they say it is. And for a long time, before social media, they could hide it. Well, now, particularly with X, particularly with a lot of very popular podcasters like Joe Rogan, like what's his face, Russell Brand.
Yep.
These are people, millions and millions and millions of people listen to them. You don't have to like them, but facts are facts. You see, everyone's entitled to their opinion, Joe. You're not entitled to your own facts.
Right.
And that's what these things are. Listen, you don't like Vivek? Don't vote for him. But I'm going to tell you this. Nikki Haley getting millions of dollars from powerful people should trouble you.
Yeah.
It should trouble you. And I can go on and on and on.
Let me throw this out there to you. A couple things. Number one is this. And I have nothing against some of these people, Joe. Okay. But let's take Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. Okay. I already know what Charlie's going to say. I already know what he's going to say. I've been watching him long enough. So I know the positions he's going to take on pretty much every single issue. And a lot of others in conservative media. And I like them. I value what they do. They're in the breach in their own way. We're in the breach in our own way. Okay. But here's my thing. Joe Rogan, I don't know what Joe Rogan's going to say. And I like that about him. I don't agree with him on many, many things. But I don't know everything he's going to say. I don't know everything Russell Brand is going to say. I don't know what's going to come out of his mouth. I have a feeling what's coming out of his mouth. I know that things that have come out of his mouth I don't agree with. But here's the thing I like about them. That means you can't spoon feed them BS.
Because they're not owned. You see,
that's what I mean. Now, I'm not saying Charlie Kirk is. I'm not saying that.
But that is what we should look for in a politician. You see, that's the difference. Joe Rogan, like him or not, is not owned. Russell Brand is not owned. Nikki Haley's owned.
I'll tell you two other people who are not owned, by the way. Joe and Joe are not owned.
We don't get paid. And that's, you see, this is what, listen, we all know the power of money. People don't bite the hand that feeds them. That's why the press isn't the free press. The press is owned. It's owned. That has to change. And that's what Donald Trump, if you ask me, brought to the conversation.
Yeah, but is Vivek, now we started this segment, Joe Rossinello, here at Real Truth News on Rumble, Frontline with Joe and Joe on YouTube and Facebook and also Twitter at With Joe and Joe. Do what you can for us, guys. Like, subscribe, share. That's what Vivek brings to the table as far as I'm concerned, is that I get the feeling that he's going to do what Trump didn't do. Now, some people will say, well, Trump was bogged down because they were attacking him so much. Okay, but if he's so tough, there are things, again, I'll say one more time, he could have done as the executive without Congress to rein in, okay, some of these media organizations, social media companies. Okay, Teddy Roosevelt did it back in the day. Remember, Teddy Roosevelt was a big, antitrust president. Trump could have done the same thing. Trump didn't get anything done in that regard, okay? Now, in fairness, he was under attack. Having said that, I think Vivek is the type of guy that he's not even going to ask for congressional hearings, Senate hearings. He's just going to turn around. He's going to tell all the agencies that are responsible in the executive branch, this is what you're going to do to all these media conglomerates, because they're acting as monopolies or oligopolies and they need to be broken up.
They'd kill him. They would kill him. And just like this, that's why Trump, I think people should get that out of your head. Even if by some stroke of some crazy miracle that he gets elected, he won't stay there. They're going to stop him. It's like a kid when you were 8 who was like the toughest kid and you were beating him in a board game. He took the game and he turned it upside down. That's what they are. They're not going to allow it.
I gotta throw in, Joe. I gotta throw in one thing there. You just reminded me of something because I went through this when I was a kid, as I'm sure you did. Not only do they take the game, they throw the game over their head and say the game is over. They then turn around and say, "But I won the game."
Oh, even better. Even better.
They
And
won.
that's what
I won.
this is.
They say, "Yeah, but the pieces are behind you because you threw them." You say, "No, that's conspiracy theory. I won. Screw you."
That is exactly right. And that's what this is. They're not going to allow it. You see, that's, again, should speak to people. That's what I'm hoping people open their eyes to. This isn't conspiracy. We don't live in a democracy. This isn't a republic. We are controlled and ruled. And that should bother you. But it doesn't to many. And that is basically my problem with this.
Right. Well, here's also the thing, Joe. If someone wants to do that, and again, this is more on a one-to-one daily, in our daily routines when we run into people type of thing. But if somebody was to say that to me, okay, and if I was to even respectfully suggest that maybe they should look into it more, when they tell me my head's buried in the sand, that's when my brains fall out, the vein pops out, and I say, "You're the slave." Okay, you're the one that they say about. You're the one that they're talking about when you think they're talking about me, but they're talking about you. You're the one with your head buried in the sand because you want to go la 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 la. Everything's fine. I have my abortion. I have my birth control pills. My daughter could be my son. My son could be my daughter. I don't want to hear anything about it because I'm a feckless person and I have no conviction whatsoever. And I'm just going to keep voting for Joe Biden. And if Bill Gates tells me I need to eat bugs, then guess what? I'm going to eat bugs. Those people, Joe, not for nothing, sometimes good old-fashioned shaming is
But they have no
something that needs to be
shame.
done.
I've come to the
I
conclusion
agree.
of this. You can't shame a person who has no shame. People who have, like, basically an active conscience are shamed. They get red-faced. What those people understand is one thing: money. You
Well,
see, I'm a firm believer in moving the dial through money. And that is how you attack that. Notice this, and I tip my hat to my Jewish brothers and sisters. They got rid of the president from Harvard. Christians should do the same thing, but we don't.
right.
They pulled the money. They said, "We're not giving you money." Guess what happened?
She
They
got fired.
walked her right out the door. And that is exactly what Christians and people of goodwill, and that's the coalition I'm trying to build. It's called the people of goodwill. All types of people who are fed up, who have eyes that are open, and basically say, "You know something? We're not doing it." And here's another thing. We're not going to boycott you for a month. You're done.
You're done.
You're done. Starbucks. This is my Animal House speech. Starbucks. Niedermeyer. Finished.
Starbucks finished.
And that is what people have to do. I'm not giving you any more money.
Right.
The production code did that with the U.S. bishops at a particular time in American history. They said, if
Right.
you put this out there, this movie, I'm going to tell my people, we're not going to go. And you're going to lose money. By the way, Disney does that with China. China says certain things can't be in that movie. Watch the Catholic League's documentary on Disney. And they bow to China. Well,
Right.
we could do the same thing, but we don't. You see, they have no shame. That's what they understand. And all of this virtue signaling is nothing more than bullcrap. The second that it's not profitable for them anymore to do any of this, they will drop this virtual signaling so fast their head will spin. Your head will spin. And that is how you beat them. But
Right.
we don't. How do you think unions get leverage? You think they pay the Teamsters $60 an hour because they like them? No, the Teamsters walk into a company and say, if you don't do this, your freight's not getting
You know
moved.
what? I want to chime in on that a second. Joe Rossinello here, Real Truth News. If you're watching us on Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook, The Frontline with Joe and Joe, and @ Joe and Joe on Twitter, please help us out. Whatever you could do to help us out. Obviously, there's 130 people that are listening to us, Joe, in the chat room or watching us, and a lot of people in the chat room. Help us out. Share the conversation. Get more people involved. Okay, Joe, let me tell you this. Back in the day, I was one of those guys that I thought, because I was kind of a knee-jerk conservative, that it was wrong for the union guys to call the guys who were breaking the strike line, who were crossing the picket line, for calling them scabs. Okay, I thought that was wrong. Now, I don't want to call people scabs. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to. I'm not trying to be harsh. But you want to know what? Now, as I've gotten older and more sensible and more reasonable, I realized that those Teamsters were right. Is that don't cross the picket line, man. Don't cross the picket line and take away our power and give it to them, because eventually they're going to do what they're doing to us. They're going to do it to you. Now, again, they were harsh. They called them scabs and everything else. But the bottom line is this. We need to do the same thing. We need to tell people, why are you supporting these people? Why are you crossing that picket line, so to speak? For what reason are you doing this? There is no reason for you to do this.
And
okay?
that's the truth.
Because
especially
eventually
if
they're
you're a
going to come
regular
after
person,
you.
Joe. Especially if you're a regular person trying to make ends meet. They don't represent you. You see, that's what I want to get out of this podcast. I want to gather people. It may not even be necessarily people that see eye to eye on everything. But what you should see is this. They don't represent you.
Exactly.
And in many circles, they hate you.
Right.
They hate you. Oh, they don't hate me. Look inside your refrigerator. Your kids eat at that refrigerator. You're going to tell me they like you?
Well, go look at the quart of milk you just bought for $5.
There you go.
And then ask if they're on your. Maybe they like you. Maybe they think you're a wonderful person, but they're making you pay $5 for that quart of milk.
And that's where people think about the union. Good example. In the union hall, not everyone sees eye to eye on everything, but they stand shoulder to shoulder. Why? Because they're protecting their livelihood.
Right.
We have to get our country back. People, we have to get, and Donald Trump is just whatever. Donald Trump is, to be honest with you, if you ask me, he took a Polaroid, and people should look at that picture. Donald Trump is going to come and go, and I don't think he's going to be the president because they're not going to let him. And even if he wins, I think they'll kill him. I'll say it publicly, and I'm not the only one that has said this.
Well, didn't Vivek say that recently also?
Well,
I don't think he said they'll kill him, but he said that they don't want this guy to be anywhere near the ballot. He said something along those lines.
Even if he somehow gets in, they will kill him. And many people have no problem with that.
Well, and that, Joe Rossinello, listen, that's the unfortunate part. Hey, listen, Joe, let's keep having this conversation. It's going to be a fun and exciting year, and we're going to be right there in the breach at the front line with Joe and Joe on YouTube and on Facebook, @ Joe and Joe on X, and also Real Truth News on Rumble for all of you out there. Thank you so much. You guys honored us so much. We have 143 people, Joe, watching, which means there's going to be thousands after it's posted, which is great. A lot of people in the chat room, Francine, Stanley, Canada, a whole bunch of people. Welcome to the PSYOP. I love that. I love that particular one. And a whole host. Steve, again, we reconciled. We know you're Catholic. I know you're trying to be tongue-in-cheek with the George Carlin thing. Joe, do we forgive Steve?
Oh, we love Steve.
We love Steve.
You do.
So we got everybody in there. I didn't mention everybody. But, hey, listen, you guys welcomed us back onto the screen because a lot, Joe and I haven't been mixing it up for a few months. So we're back Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. Please. That's when we're going live, by hook or by crook. Unless somebody dies, and God willing that doesn't happen, we are going to be here, all right? And we want to thank you all for coming out. Remember, Real Truth News on Rumble, and YouTube and Facebook, The Frontline with Joe and Joe, and on X, at with Joe and Joe. And I'm just being corrected on Rumble. It's rumble.com, The Frontline TV News. Anyway, you'll find us. Just Google us. In the meantime, Joe Rossinello, important conversation. We're going to keep talking about these topics. Thank you. Thank you all out there. Thank our producer. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. Barbara Farley, we love you.